All right, welcome to Digging for Wisdom Playoff Edition. It's time to write your little excuses to work. So you're coming down with a cold, your throat's raspy. What do you got, kid? You got COVID? No, it's called playoff fever. We got a little case of it. Everybody's got the playoff fever. Everybody wants to go to a Thursday and a Friday game. If your team is like half the state or more than half the state and out of the playoffs, you definitely have chances to see teams that you never got to see before. But before we get started about the playoffs, Diggs, you got some on-air time this past weekend on the big show. Tell me how that went.
I got some big time on the big show, and I actually wanted to share this story, not necessarily to brag or anything, but because I know a lot of people have said, I love when y'all pull behind the scenes. I love when Ward talks about producer decisions and where he sends cameras to, and I get a little bit of insight, off the air, just because Ward will send me a message and say, hey, where do you think we should go? Where do you think we should pair this game with this game? And from a football perspective, and I can give that. And he might say, well, you're an idiot. I think we're going to do this anyway. Or, oh, that's a great idea. We'll pair this game and this game. So I even get a little bit of insight into it. But I got to do something that I've never gotten to do before, and that was head up to the NBC5 studios to go film the inside story. And I kind of wanted to share because I was surprised at some things. So I think some of our viewers might be surprised at what I was surprised about, because, not all of us get to go inside that gated, security coded entrance. I'm going to steal your code, Ward. I'm going to have to find your access card and duplicate it and go in there.
It's easy to sneak around in there on the weekend, and it looks like a ghost town in there on the weekends.
It really does. And you texted Pat and said, let him in, and Pat let me in, and my wife and I, we went in there, and the very first thing we do is he kind of gave us a little bit of a tour, and we got to see this newsroom. And this thing is huge. It's like this big, like a cubicle area where there's probably maybe room for 200 employees. And I'm thinking, what are all these people doing if they can't 5 people do this? And apparently they got room for 200 people there. And then he walked us, he's like, oh, we got to go check to see if they're ready for us. And then he walks us into this producer room to kind of talk to the director or something. And here is this room that is basically like 200, maybe I'm exaggerating, like millions of TVs, 200 TVs, monitors everywhere. And again, I'm thinking, like, what would David Finfrock think if he was looking at this scene? And then he's like, okay, well, now we're going to go into the studio. And I'm like, well, okay, like everything I've seen is state of the art, high end stuff. And then we go into what I would think is an escape room. I don't know if you ever done an escape room, Ward. I love doing escape rooms. And you just open this door, and all of a sudden we enter this new reality, and this thing is beautiful. Like you can't really prepare somebody, and he was telling me some players have gotten, Pat has told me some players have gotten freaked out by how beautiful. Starstruck how the studio, because it is like you got lights, you got camera robots, and you just got
that's what gets everybody.
Huge walls of just like LED screens. Like you're just in here, and there's different graphics up. I don't know what else they shoot in this thing. Hopefully it's just us, because that would make me feel even better if it's just us. But man, it was beyond my wildest imagination. And you told me this, and it's one of those things you don't believe, just because Pat Doney, to me, he's a TV star. He's somebody he's over there. He does those TV shows. He does those things. But he was so down to earth. He was so helpful. Just walking me through everything. And my wife even made the comment, like, Pat is like born for this. Like, he's got the personality, got the demeanor to do this, and he absolutely does. I mean, just his patience and things to that nature, and getting me ready and kind of walking me through how everything was going to work. And then we did it. And then I want to share this story just to kind of highlight, I screwed up. I messed up during it. My brain blocked out, and it was just the cognitive dissonance, because we got Forney and North Forney, and they're in different regions. I naturally connect DeSoto and Duncanville together, but they're in different divisions, I should say. And the other one were in different divisions. And my brain just locked out when I was talking about Duncanville and North Forney. Like I said, Duncanville and DeSoto, and I just stopped and I froze there. But you know what Pat did? He just smiled at me. He's like, we got this, Diggs. Tell me what you were trying to say. And he walked out that. He's like, okay, this is what you're going to say. We're going to start here and we're going to start over. And I went through it afterward, after that kind of, okay, yeah, I got this. I know who Duncanville and North Forney and Waxahachie and Rockwall Heath are, and Forney and Cedar Hill and DeSoto and Longview. And then I just rolled through it. And afterward, he was just so gracious and so grateful. He took pictures with us and he was like, Diggs, you did a great job. And it was just such a different experience. I kind of know what to expect going into this. I had no idea what to expect going into this. It was a really good experience. And you do this this is like your Saturday. This is like, your Saturday hobby. You go up there and do that. I guess
my Saturday is spent in that control room. And we usually bring parents of the guests in there, and I'm sure they did that with Brock Boyd. And they did the same thing you do. They're like, what? How do you? And I was like, you just concentrate on those two middle screens. Ignore all the other ones. They'd use those for live news and all this other stuff. The two center screens and just forget. Because you start wandering your eyes over there, all of a sudden Alabama, Georgia's on, and you forget about the show, and it's a great touchdown. I was like, nope, just concentrate on those two. But I'm proud of you for not getting tripped up by those robotic cameras.
No, I didn't
come at you quick.
Yeah, and I was happy about it because they got the timers on. You got the teleprompters, and they had the timers. Because one of my paranoias was I could talk about this for 15 minutes. I mean, we're gonna talk about this stuff for an hour tonight, and you're like, okay, you get 3:45. And I know you told me they can edit this and do that. Yeah. We had B-roll and whatnot, but I didn't want to give them 2 minutes because then they're gonna be like, we're gonna retape this, and I didn't want to give them 7 minutes. So I really wanted to try to give them at least 3.5 to 4 minutes and make editing decisions easy. But it was an incredible experience. Hopefully, it's something everybody gets to do once. I know all of our just do something great, and we'll get you on the story. Just do something great. We'll get you there. Whether you're a player or you got a great story for us, let Ward know. He'll get you on there.
Exactly. Over-prepare, Diggs. I knew you were going to be ready for that deal because that's what you do. And I try to over-prepare, too. I sent him, I think, at least 11 to 13 B-roll tapes because I said Diggs could go. I know he goes all directions on this podcast. He could easily do that. And you can cover whatever you wanted to. And, like you said, Pat's a professional, man. If you get locked up like he did, he'll pull you out of it. Even if you were live and you got locked up, he would have pulled you right out of it. He can pull you out of it once, twice, then we might have to redo it. But one time he can pull you out. I know there's a kid from Faith Family that came in like 3 years ago, and he got locked up by the big lights, not what he was going to see. He started staring in the cameras and got lost, and Pat pulled him out of it once, and then the second time, it just really didn't work out for him. We had to start over because I was like, all right, thank God this show's not live, or we would have had some problems. But it's a fun thing. I'm glad you went out there. I watched it this morning. I didn't get a chance to go in this weekend. I had a bunch of people around. I was feeling a little under the weather, but you did terrific. It's just what I wanted in that segment. People wanted to hear that analysis. You gave some good dark horses there at the end. I think a couple of the dark horses looked like they shocked Pat a little bit. He's like, oh, what? Okay. Interesting. Now I know. So I'm glad you got to do it.
We gave you 3.5 minutes here. We'll give you, I don't know, at least an hour. You might start going like this,
wrapping it up.
Wrap it up. But that's what I was paranoid about. But I was excited. Thank you for the opportunity, and I'm ready. I'm ready to talk a lot more about it now because I had a lot more to say previously. But
okay.
we got TV shows.
You can't do it in 3. You got to do it now. Yeah, this is where you do it. All right, you want to try to run through some brackets here? Talk about the playoffs because it's playoff time now. So let's give it a talking to. Let's talk about our first bracket. Which, by the way, he did it last year. He's going to do it this year. Name the regionals. North Crowley region. See, I got locked up on North Forney. North Crowley region because they're the defending champs and they deserve to have their own region name here. But what do you think of when this bracket came out? Anybody challenges North Crowley in this thing. And again, I hate to do this because we have first-round playoff games, but my eyes are constantly 2-3 rounds away. I can do it because I'm not a coach, but coaches will yell at you if you start doing it. I'm not looking at anything past Keller. I said, well, I already looked past Keller once I saw Keller was on your side of the bracket. But what do you feel about this side of the bracket?
Well, I know he's excited because I remember a scenario that if Odessa Permian were in this, they would have to go out and bus up and go out to Odessa Permian. And now at least maybe they'll get to play in Abilene or something. But one of the things that I want to kind of tell everybody how I handle doing this is just my opinion of you got these 18 pods, who I think is going to win each 18 pods. So if you see the North Crowley Regional, well, you know who I'm going to pick to get all the way through this 18 pod. And pretty much last year, I think 90% of them held through. We didn't lose many of the regionals. That doesn't mean Keller can't come out here and pull an upset, but North Crowley is definitely going to be a huge favorite. I'm actually excited about the bottom half because Coppell is not what Coppell has been in the past. Or Little Elm pushed them, Hebron pushed them at times. So I think that Plano can give them, with Chance Cully in that running game, they can compress it to 5 or 6 possessions for the game. They can give them a little bit of trouble because Coppell has shown a run defense you can be run on. But I actually think Richardson in the second round matches up pretty well with Coppell. I'm not going to say that they're going to beat them, but they were my dark horse because I think Richardson is not going to look at Coppell and go, we're losing this game by 40 or 50 like we did to Allen last year. Richardson has a really good chance to be competitive with Coppell in the second round. I think they'll be a big favorite over Haltom. I think Coppell should beat Plano by 2 touchdowns. North Crowley we're just all North Forney today. We got North Forney on the mind. North Crowley, I think, has a pretty easy path, but I don't think anybody in the bottom half of this bracket even scares North Crowley. I think North Crowley should win this region, probably no closer than 14 points in any of the games.
Yeah, and because I like Richardson too, because they're not new to this anymore. They celebrated hard after their win against Haltom last year. I don't think obviously we're not going to see the same because it had been a long time since they've been there. They got some experience there. I do see them as possibly going against North Crowley. I shouldn't say possibly, probably. I would probably pick them to go against North Crowley. I feel the same way that you said about Plano. If they get the running game going, who knows what's going to happen in that one? I'm not sold on Coppell at all. So that should be interesting. All right, you want to move on?
Let's move on.
Let's move on to what we're calling the Allen Regional, which Allen Lewisville is one of the games I will be at this week for sure. I may actually be at that second one too, Lake Highlands, South Grand Prairie. So I should have a great preview for next week if whoever wins those games. And talk about Lake Ridge. We got to talk about Lake Ridge or they come at me. Lake Ridge finally getting a playoff spot, and they get a home game against Trinity.
Yeah, there are some really fascinating stories, and I've been kind of debating, and I don't really understand why. I have to kind of still do a little bit more research into it. But South Grand Prairie apparently has found some loophole to give them the home game in this, even though I think that they should be at a neutral site. But they pulled out the instructions and they screenshotted it to me. They're like, well, we do get a neutral site if we got 2 seeds. This is why they should get a neutral site. Lake Highlands finished second in district. Richardson finished first. South Grand Prairie finished second in district. Arlington Bowie finished first. But apparently because they had to go to Lake Highlands in the last 2 years, there's like an exception why they get a home game out of this. But I think they've been going back and forth. This is Lake Highlands, South Grand Prairie, 6th ward, the 6th straight year.
Wow.
Lake Highlands and South Grand Prairie in the first round. Obviously, they know each other. It's just like a district rivalry. It's just like the next game there. And I think this is probably one of the most fascinating games in the district because you've got Lake Highlands, who we saw very first week against Forney. They showed us some glimpses, but then Richardson stepped up and kind of shut them down. And all of a sudden, that high-powered offense that we thought that Lake Highlands could put 28 up on anybody, got some questions now. But then Arlington Bowie did the same exact thing to South Grand Prairie this past week, where they shut them down and they showed a playmaking defense. They got turnovers in that game. So I feel like when I'm considering this Lake Highlands South Grand Prairie game, South Grand Prairie to me has a wider spectrum of, like, their ceiling is higher and their floor is lower. Lake Highlands has a much more, a more consistent game ground. So if South Grand Prairie can get into that mode that beat Rowlett 72-14 earlier in the year, I think South Grand Prairie is more talented. I think Lake Highlands has more pathways to win the game. So I'm going to stick with that. Statistically, I like Lake Highlands, even though they got to go to the Gopher Warrior Bowl. And I'm going to pester the Lake Highlands coach. I think he should appeal that. I think he should get them to a neutral site. And maybe by the time this airs, if you see it at a neutral site, Diggs did his job on that. Because remember, Lewisville Allen 2 years ago ended up at Clark because of that policy.
That's right. You're exactly right. If you want to switch up to Lewisville Allen for a second, because I was just thinking about this before we got on here. We both were at the Prosper game. A lot of that yardage in the air comes from the bubble screens. Lewisville's DBs are going to have to jump that. They're going to have to find a way to jump that because they're going to need a pick six. They're going to need one turnover of significance. Maybe not a pick six, but draw that thing into the red zone. They're probably going to need 2 of those because they're kind of fell off during the end of the season. They need to prove that they can handle a team like Allen.
I kept hearing this. I saw Lewisville play at Rockwall earlier this year, and I kept hearing how they were banged up and how they were going to have a couple of players come back from injuries. I never saw those players in the box score, so I don't know what's going on with Lewisville as far as their injury situation goes, and kind of what they were expecting to see at the beginning of the year and what actually did happen. But Trey Williams, he's going to be the second best quarterback they've seen since Brandon Imhoff. Brandon Imhoff. We'll just call him Imhoff.
Braden. Yeah.
Braden Imhoff. Sorry, Braden. Yeah, I just know your last name because I'm Hoff with you, buddy, because you're pretty good. But Trey Williams is going to be the best quarterback they've seen. The running game, again, has been a little bit abysmal for Lewisville. And again, that's what happens when you graduate all of those offensive linemen. Tanel Hill doesn't get quite the holes to go through as they've had in the past. But Trey John Mueller, Landon Brazil, Landon Bogany, those have been their go-to players. And I think that they can dink and dunk their way down the field on Allen. And Lewisville has, again, I talk about like with South Grand Prairie, this wide spectrum. Lewisville at times has looked amazing, and at times they've looked head scratching. Little Elm, like for 48 minutes, Little Elm frustrated them, and they only scored 24 points on an 0-10 team this year. Yeah. So it's like, what version of Lewisville are you going to get? If Lewisville gives us their best version of Lewisville, they have a chance with a turnover to that pick six that you were talking about to upset Allen. But it's been so rare that we've seen Lewisville at their best this year. It's hard to have any confidence in picking them whatsoever.
We've seen Allen at their best 10 straight games. It seems like they haven't done – they may need some special team stuff. Man, my memory goes back to that Allen Arlington Martin game that was played up at North Texas. Kyler was there. Wager pulled out all the stops to get him a little bit of a lead, and just Kyler did whatever he had to do there. But maybe if they get some stops, or get some good special teams, play some defensive play, and then slow that thing down the second half. But having said all that, I'm picking Allen by about 14-20.
Yeah, and we talk about really competitive games. Lake Ridge and Trinity falls under that. There's going to be a lot of games we're just going to be like, advance them. This bracket has, three very interesting ones. Permian, I think you can go ahead and advance. It's funny because we saw Permian, get the brakes beat off of them by Plano. Plano is a playoff team, but I didn't see a lot in Permian that made me go, okay, well that's a really quality team. Yeah, they've won all their games since then in kind of a weak district, but 2-6A that week got just completely shattered by the DFW Metroplex, and I expect that to happen in the second round as well. But Lake Ridge has played really well, and when you think about their non-district games, all of a sudden they have a win over Richardson, they have a win over Frisco Reedy. Those are quality wins. And Trinity has kind of played with their food a little bit. LD Bell didn't give them much of a game in the week 11, but Trinity has played really well. That they're as healthy as they've been as well. So this game is a really, really good one. I don't think Trinity is going to fear going up to Mansfield and having to play there. I think just Trinity's got a little bit more talent, but this game feels like a 45-42 kind of a shootout. But Trinity plays a style that's not going to have turnovers, and I feel like Lake Ridge in that game against Reedy and that game against Richardson had key turnovers in the fourth quarter, which helped their cause. Trinity, I don't think, is going to be having that fumbleitis, so I think Trinity takes care of business. But Lake Ridge, even if you win, you lose, that doesn't change the fact. What a great story! From 0-10 to 8-2, 9-1 this year. They were fantastic. Talk about Coach Storr could definitely be in the running for Coach of the Year because of that job he did.
Yeah, big. I expect big running games from Jaden Cotton and JT Harris over there. So see who gets the most. If we were still doing fantasy, which we'll bring up a little later on, maybe I would have picked one of them. All right, let's move on. 6A to Region 2, the Duncanville Regional. Duncanville ended up tied for that district title, and Waxahachie was waving flags and putting on rings and having a good old time because they got to be halvesies or threesies on that joint. But Wiley East is the one that starts off with Rockwall Heath, which looks like one of the more entertaining first-round games. You just told me a lot of teams are going to blow out a lot of teams. Duncanville's probably going to take care of Temple. And if you want me to quickly give you the lower end there, that Klein Cons Bridgeland game is going to be pretty sweet. That's one of the 4 or 5 should be competitive games down there. And the Woodlands should not have a problem with Alden Davis, but kudos to Davis for making a postseason. It's been a while since they got in there. But that's one of the later games on on our playoff schedule. I think that's like 6 p.m. on Saturday night, so we won't know nothing till something happens. That's another one of those deals where I guess I'd have to take a look at it because they're playing at Aldine Davis's home stadium, but the Woodlands was they were even at 2. I'll have to learn how that thing goes. They're both finished second or D1 2, and I got to figure out how that works. But anyway, let's go to the North Texas games.
Yeah, you're gonna have like this dual Jekyll and Hyde personality because when you do the Houston podcast, you gotta be like, we gotta ignore these DFW area games. Let's break down the Woodlands and Aldine Davis and talk about these things. And sometimes, if you remember, I think a couple of years ago, the Jesuit Arlington game, they just misunderstood the rule, and we actually had to correct them, and they ended up fixing it. So maybe I don't know anything about the Houston area. I just pulled it up and I was like, oh, look at these teams. Magnolia, that's an interesting team. They're highly computer rated, I guess. We'll keep an eye on them. But the Wiley East Rockwell Heath game is fascinating for a couple of reasons. If Rockwell Heath was completely healthy, I would say Rockwell Heath by 21 and just move on. But again, Prosper Neal got knocked out of that Forney game again, and that game against Forney was not very competitive. And then you look at kind of what Forney has done, a competitive game against Lake Highlands earlier, got blown out by North Forney, blown out by Waxahachie. Forney looks good at times, but there are times where they kind of have questions, and for them to beat Rockwell Heath like that kind of lets you know the value of Prosper Neal. And if he's not in this game, that knocks Rockwell Heath down a few pegs. And Wiley East is going to be playing the thing I was impressed by with Wiley East is they'll do a fake punt on you. They'll go for it on 4th down and 2 in their own territory. Coach Gold will throw everything at Rockwell Heath, and I know Coach Webb will be prepared for that and playing for that. But again, it's just a depth issue with Rockwell Heath. But still, it kind of gets back to that little nudging we were talking about earlier in the year with I didn't like how many players that Rockwell Heath was playing, but I guess that's why you do it, because if Collins Jones has to come in a pivotal situation, he's got experience. He's not going to be like, the light. He's not going to be like me going to the NBC5 studios like, oh, look at all these lights. Look at this wall. I don't know what's happening. He's been in there. He understands it. I think Rockwell Heath is still a favorite despite not having Prosper Neal potentially. Again, I don't get his injury updates. I didn't think he was going to play against Rockwell, and he did, so he very well may play against that. He's worth 2 touchdowns. So if he's in there, they win by 3 scores. If he's not in there, I still think they're going to win by 1. But again, I think that makes the second round against Duncanville, if he's not in there, back to that blowout thing. I don't think they have any chance without him to be competitive with Duncanville.
I was going to say, you got to see the Civil War last week. So, did you learn anything about Wiley East besides the fact that they wear those sweet light blue uniforms? I know some people don't like them. I love them. Yeah, I actually talked to Marcus Gold about that, and he said the new superintendent came in there and agreed. You know what? You can change the colors of our school that we've been with for so long. You can add Carolina blue to it. And sure enough, they got those uniforms. But anyway, what did you learn from them in that game? Anything new?
I mean, Amarian Porter is a big playmaker. I like their sophomore sophomore running back, Udibor. He gets you those really tough yards in the middle.
Yards.
Yeah, and that's what you need. But you know what? Their infrastructure, the offensive line, defensive line is average, 6A average. And Wiley's was a little bit below average. So there was a lot of what I kind of consider ugly football, the Garland ISD nature, where it's just bad football. They look good in glimpses, but I just don't think they have the playmakers. I've seen Heath in person. I've seen Wiley East in person. Heath has got a lot more on the offensive line, defensive line, the linebackers. But Wiley East, what I saw is that they are willing to do anything, and I think they're going to find. I'm not saying they're going to out Coach Webb because Coach Webb has been there, done that. He's one of the best coaches in the area, but they're going to find something and exploit something, to get a touchdown, an edge, to get something in there. And I like that about Wiley East. Whereas you got Wiley in the 4th quarter with 4 minutes left in the game, 4th and 2, punting, there's just some conservative natures that I just cannot handle when it comes to, the ball possessions. I like analytics, and especially when your season's on the line. Wiley East was playing more passionately and more aggressively than Wiley was, even though Wiley East was basically playing a meaningless game.
Yeah, you can't do that if you're trying to go to the postseason. That trickles down to your players too. They see what kind of way you're playing. Like, okay, this is crazy. All right, let's go to the North Forney Regional. We finally get to say the word North Forney, which we've been trying to say for 28 minutes now. But the North Forney region, they get Saxe. I personally thought Saxe had quit a while ago. They showed some fight and got into this thing. Waxahachie's going to go down. Was going to play Waco Midway. I believe that is actually down in Waco.
Yep.
So how about that? District champions, wave your flags. You're still going on the road. Down there, the Grand Oaks Aldi Nimitz winner does not really matter because they're not going to get past Cy Ranch or even any further. If any team is going to give a North Texas team some problems, it's Cy Ranch. We talked a lot about Klein this season because they do all that. Or maybe we haven't talked about it on this podcast, but they got the new coach that came over from Fulshire, and they do all that wild stuff. Everything's an onside kick, go for two on everything, fourth down, everything. And they got off to a great start, but then they started getting injuries, and then especially on defense, and they're giving up 50, 60, and they barely got in the playoffs here at the last week of the season. They needed an upset loss, and they got it, and they got in this thing. But let's concentrate on the Saxe North Forney. What does Saxe have to do to beat North Forney?
Very much like my attitude toward the Plano East Allen game, lots of prayer will be needed. North Forney should be a big favorite, and I think Waxahachie is at least a 3-score favorite over Midway right now. This is kind of one of those brackets where you just kind of start looking ahead. And, North Forney, Waxahachie, that game was in Allen last year. I hope they bring it back to Allen. I'd love to go check that out on a Saturday afternoon. That was a fantastic game, and I'd love to see them run it back. I think North Forney is, would want that. I think they remember what happened against Waxahachie last year. They were still a little bit young, and I think they'll use that experience. So we'll talk more about that next week. We won't count our chickens before they hatch, but this is one of those regionals that you just kind of just move everybody past. You got North Forney, Waxahachie, big favorites.
All right, let's go into Division 2, 6A Division 2, and this is definitely the Denton-Guyer district. We got Jesuit and Arlington Lamar playing each other. The winner gets the winner, Guyer and Rock Hill. Rock Hill barely got in there, but they did on the last week. So they're in there. They didn't show me a lot of offense the time I saw them against Plano. So that's going to be a problem going against Guyer. And then how about Mansfield and Byron Nelson? What does Mansfield have to do to upend Byron?
Yeah, I don't even think Mansfield would make the playoffs in District 4 6A. They would probably get under Timber Creek. I mean, and Byron Nelson has had periods of time where, they win those games by 5 scores, but then they only win those games, some of them by 2 scores. They still won all of them. They didn't have any sort of slip ups. So, I feel like if Byron Nelson is at their best, they should blow out Mansfield. But Mansfield, if they can, get the running game going, I know their best target is a wide receiver, and they could probably break a couple of plays. And in a shootout, that would be good, but they got to compress the game because Byron Nelson's just going to go up and down the field on them. We saw Mansfield when they played Lake Ridge, when they played North Crowley. It was a name your score game. Yeah. I think Byron Nelson, it has a good enough offense for where they're going to be able to name their score. It's just, can Mansfield stay up with them? And I don't think at times you got Zion Robinson on the field, you can get your scores, but can you get him? Can he have a 7 touchdown game? Probably not. No. So I think Byron Nelson's going to take care of business. They'll have to go out to West Texas, but even if they get Friendship, they've been playing Friendship in non-district, so there'll be a comfort level there. Denton-Guyer, big favorite over Rock Hill. Probably the game of the region is Jesuit versus Lamar because I feel like Jesuits finally figured something out. It's like they had such a brand new group of kids that did not have football experience. It takes them 7 or 8 weeks to get into it. Kind of like with Richardson, they grew through their district. I think the computers got Lamar as a favorite. I think Jesuit's going to win this game probably comfortably, just because I feel like they grew up in district. Coach Hickman's going to have a good game plan. Lamar has got skill players. They've got stars, but the defense, they'll give up 53 on you like they did against South Grand Prairie. And Jesuit finally looks like they feel comfortable in their clothes to get 35 points or so, and that's what they'll need to beat Lamar.
Because they had Richardson in that game. They had him on the ropes. They were up by 2 scores. They gave Lamar the advantage because of Tyrone Thomas. The guy can get you 200 yards a game. But if he doesn't get you 200 yards a game, that's when you lose the game. But we'll have a camera at that one as well. Let's move on to the South Lake Carroll. Now, why would you name a region after South Lake Carroll? They're barely a playoff team. All right, sorry. We haven't seen South Lake Carroll on our show since they beat the pants off of either Trinity or Byron Nelson because they beat the pants off of everybody. Undefeated, coasting through there. They should be completely healthy, you would think, because they haven't had to play anybody. You just rest who there is. So they're taking on Crowley. Hebron has got Prosper on Thursday night up at Prosper. And then you'll think this is funny, but the Country Roads game this week is going to Choctaw. A long drive to Choctaw for Arlington, Bowie, and Burton.
You're gonna go get some B-roll up in Thackerville and say, hey, what can you do? Yeah, this is kind of one of those. I think the way Berkner has played at times, they got beat bad by Jesuit. I mean, that it wasn't even a close thing. They did bounce back against Pierce, and I'm hearing, well, Jesuit, they had maybe a flu bug going around. It wasn't quite the Berkner that we wanted to represent ourselves at. But Bowie, man, I loved watching Coach Sam dance and
Yeah,
heckle us
he
pick
let
him
us know,
against
didn't
he let us know. And I just think Bowie's got way too much talent for Berkner. When Berkner, can out talent you, I think they can succeed. But I think Coach Bryant's gonna have to wait another year to get his signature playoff win. I think Bowie's a big favorite. Prosper should be, but think of that Plano
he?
West
Playing the
game.
West games.
They let him hang around, and you look back several times. There are several occasions, even the Princeton game. It took till the second half for Prosper to really pull back, pull away from them. Is it an Allen hangover? Is it just something there? Even that Rockwall Heath game, it took the second half. Hebron is good enough. If they play like they did against Plano West, that can be a 48-minute game where Prosper is going to get tested. But Prosper at their best should beat Hebron by 3 touchdowns. South Lake Carroll should be a big winner, and Pebble Hills probably wins up there. But South Lake Carroll has a pretty good path to get to that third round. And you look at the brackets,
Yeah, they
I
do.
think we're all looking at South Lake Carroll and Prosper in the third round. It's the game to watch in this bracket.
That'll be game of the week for sure. All right, let's move on to the Longview. We go East Texas on this Longview Regional.
Is this
Long,
disrespectful, Ward?
it is disrespectful for the DeSoto kids. They deserve this. Although I know why you did it. They got to play face to face, and somebody got their pants knocked off them. But we might get another rematch here unless somehow Rowlett wins, which I don't. But kudos to Rowlett to making it to the postseason. But man, you got a trip out to Longview. That's going to be tough for you. And then DeSoto gets Coppers Cove. They're once again getting it. They always like to get that first round game done on Thursday so they can really concentrate. But when they got to concentrate last year, it didn't really work for them. For the
I don't
second.
know if it makes you feel better, but Longview's got to come to Rowlett. So
Oh, do that? That's
yeah,
right. That is an HBJ. Isn't it?
it'll be an HBJ game, but at Longview, they love it. They love the road trips. They love coming out here. I swear, at least at 6 of my 11 Thursday games, I've seen Longview coaches scouting somebody. They were there at Wiley East, and they ultimately didn't need to be there, but they had people there. I mean, Longview loves coming out here. They love taking care of business. I actually want to pick your brain a little bit because I talked to Ant-Man Football about this, our guy Anthony Blaylock, because when I was looking at the computer polls, and again, this is just numbers on a screen, it said that College Park and Magnolia were 2 of the higher rated teams out there, but they got to play each other in the second round if they win. And so it's like, even though you got 2 pretty good teams, there's a little bit of a buffer here because only one of them is going to make it to the third round. So a really good team is going to get knocked out in round 2, kind of like with DeSoto and Longview.
And that team, first of all, College Park, they got, we voted for our coach of the year. It's College Park's coach, Kyle Coach, who actually used to coach at DeSoto. He used to be an assistant over there at DeSoto before going down there. They have a deadly offense and defense, and I think Magnolia is mainly on the offensive side of the ball where they're running. Again, that's going to be a monster matchup. It's probably going to be our game of the week next week when it happens. Side Lakes is just like Richardson was last year. They're just happy to be in the postseason, first time ever. And Eisenhower is in an extremely weak 14-6A, kind of think 9-6A or something like that. Or it's just a very bad district, and they're in, and they're going to be out. And that's just the way it goes. So College Park, and I think College Park gives run to whoever comes out of the DeSoto Longview. I really do. I think that's going to be a challenge. That's going to be one I definitely want to have a twofer on for both of the shows because I think that's going to be a challenge. Now, remember, the last 2 years I've said that with Willis and DeSoto, and I've been wrong. Although Willis played strong for a half once, but I really think College Park has the defense to kind of hold it because Willis never really had the defense, and I think College Park does to maybe slow down some of these guys.
And what's kind of even fascinating, and you don't need to advance the slide yet, but when we get to the next slide, it's like the powerhouses from Houston are in this bracket.
Yeah.
The next bracket, it's like whoever gets out of that's got a much easier route to get to the regional finals than this route. So this regional, the Longview regional, it certainly could end up being the College Park regional, the Magnolia regional, because the DeSoto regional, there's a lot of parity here. I think in the first round, we're going to get 4 blowouts, but I think after that, you're going to see a lot more parity in this region.
Yeah, no, I agree with that for sure. I'm again, I try not to look too far down the road, but I'm looking at round three and getting excited about it. All right, we got the they call this the Forney Regional. Now, Forney earned their little regional name because at one point you were thinking maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago they're fighting to get in this thing, but now they get in and they get the regional. Why? Because Naaman Forest kind of backed into the playoffs. They got in there. They're not going to give much of a game. Cedar Hill is kind of tail spinning downward as the season ends, so they don't scare you. So you had to give it to Forney, didn't you?
Yeah, this was kind of a Forney by default for that reason, because you think of a couple of years ago, if it weren't for that collapse against Longview, Lancaster probably would have made it to the fourth round. So it's like if you get in that 11-6A second seed angle, that whole side of the bracket is very weak. And usually it's a team like Cedar Hill or Lancaster who gets to sit there and take advantage of it. Last year it ended up being Longview who took advantage of it, got to that game against DeSoto and took care of business because it was flipped. This year, it's Forney that's going to be in that position, and I think Forney is going to have a wide path. Naaman Forest shouldn't have any problem with that. Probably the game of the week, I don't want to say anything bad about the Houston area. It's going to be Cedar Hill and Harker Heights. But the one thing I listened to my Midlothian sources. They saw these two teams back to back. Midlothian played Harker Heights, then they played Cedar Hill. They beat Harker Heights and lost to Cedar Hill non-convincing. In a blowout. So they think that and that was before Cedar Hill got their quarterback situation kind of figured out. I think Cedar Hill is a much better team today than they were then, but they don't look like that because they just got through that gauntlet. Yeah, but I think things are going to get a little bit easier now against Harker Heights. So I think Cedar Hill is a favorite over Harker Heights, even on the road. I think they take care of business, and that's probably the best game of this group. Every time you see, Willis Spring Westfield's got the name value, but I couldn't tell you anything about this year's version of them.
Well, sadly, Spring Westfield's in that district I just told you about, where everybody's kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Trash. And even Spring Westfield is trash this year. So Willis, who's not nearly as good as they were, they have a freshman quarterback that's really good, and obviously they have the best player in Texas on their team in Jermaine Bishop. But that's probably it. The game of the week in this bracket is Tomball and Waller, and you don't know a lot about Waller, but Waller has that sophomore quarterback, TK Gaines, that a certain North Texas powerhouse tried desperately to get to come up and play for their team over the summer until another player on North 40's pop shut that down real quick. And he's back at Waller, but he's only a sophomore, great baseball player, tremendous quarterback. And I think me and you've talked about this with Tomball. You never really know what to expect because their regular season's blah blah blah. They're 8-2. They beat some teams. They lost to some teams. But you got to find out if playoff Tomball is coming, because playoff Tomball can go 4 rounds, and you don't know what hits you. All of a sudden, they're in the regional final. So we got to see which one comes out of that one.
I feel like you meant to say North Crowley again instead of North Forney. We just got North Forney on our mind because you.
When did I say North Crowley or North Forney?
When we're talking about dads shutting down things.
Oh no, I didn't. I made a point not to mention the team at all, but I guess you knew what I was talking about. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
But yeah, anyway, let's move on to 5A, shall we? 5A Division 1, Region 1, the Denton Ryan region. And I had to scope it to make sure Alito wasn't in this, which they aren't. They're in the other one, the next one, which I'm sure is called Alito. Any of the Fort Worth teams from 4 or 5A, do you think they can at least challenge? Do you think Wyatt can challenge Richland? Boy, what am I repeating everything?
Richland, Wyatt got 60 put up against them against Arlington Heights, and I think Richland is right there, if not a little bit better on the offensive side. I think we're going to see blowouts aplenty. I think we're going to see Richland and Denton Ryan in our DFW area teams advance very comfortably.
All right, well then that's all we need to say here, because I know you think a Fort Worth team can be competitive here, and that's Arlington Heights against Brewer. Your thoughts on that game where James T. Harris will be there? Not J.T. Harris from Trinity, but James T. Harris from Game Day Productions.
Yeah, Saginaw. Poor Saginaw. 11-0 last year and riding high. This year is going to be one and done, and it's only going to be Alito's grace and mercy if this isn't a 70 piece on them because Saginaw's defense is not very good. But one thing, it's kind of an interesting fact about the Arlington Heights and Fort Worth Brewer game is that Brewer played Saginaw earlier this year and beat them 33-9. So they played Saginaw and just wiped them out, non-competitive game. And then Saginaw, that's Arlington Heights, one loss. Arlington Heights has been playing a brand of football that is susceptible to a little bit of a really good offense. And Brewer's got a really good running back as well. He's got just as many yards as Carson James. So when you think about what are they going? And his name is Cameron Coleman, by the way. Cameron Coleman, Colton Riles, that quarterback. They've got the players. So this game is an instant shootout. But Arlington Heights, I think it's going to come down to a key play. And who's got the best defensive player on the field? It's going to be Arlington Heights. So I'm thinking a 45-42 kind of a win for Arlington Heights. It's going to be a one-score game. But that's the best game of the bracket. Alito is going to have no competition all the way through until round 4. Yeah, you can't even look ahead in this bracket because it's like Alito by 70, Alito by 63, Alito by 56. Yeah. It's just going to be. It's going to be.
They'll start going down slowly, but they'll still win by 4 or 5 scores. All right, let's go to Division I, Region 2, the Lone Star bracket. And you probably had trouble giving them the bracket the way they're playing lately, but you gave it to them because there's really no other option unless you felt like giving it to Midlothian. Congratulations to North Mesquite, first time since 2015. We announced it 2 weeks ago, but it wasn't true till last week. Burleson Centennial squeaked in there, and now they get a trip to Georgetown. West Mesquite gets to host Frisco instead of having to go to one of the Frisco schools last year, I believe. Oh, no, they hosted a team last year, too, and beat the pants off. Was it Reedy?
No, I think it was McKinney North.
McKinney North, okay. Yeah. McKinney North. And then Midlothian gets Eastview. Any of these games going to be competitive at all?
I think West Mesquite, Frisco, right? Just because Frisco's got a good enough offense. They got the quarterbacks, or they got the coach's son, Corbin Harbert, Cam Anderson, Brennan Lacey. I was looking at their roster, and they don't have the one go-to player, but they got 5 or 6 players on their offensive side of the ball who can do great things and make a play. But I look at that McKinney North game. That was a 48-45 overtime game, and they're not going to shut down West Mesquite by any means. West Mesquite's just got too many options as well. And the offensive line is going to be bigger than McKinney North. The defensive line is going to be bigger. The linebacking is going to be better. The culture is going to be better. Jalen Dodson, Demarion Robinson, Kamari Carter, Richard Clark, all should have huge days. If you're talking about fantasy, load up on West Mesquite players because I think they're going to have 600, 700 yards in this game. They should beat Frisco, but the glimmer of hope is, can Frisco get 2 turnovers and go score for score with them? I think they might be able to get a turnover or 2 and go score for score, but I think that West Mesquite should take care of business in the shootout. Georgetown's going to have a big win over Burleson Centennial. Frisco Lone Star with a big win. Eastview, I love you, coach, over there. I know you listen to the dump every day. You watch the dump, or you'll listen to the dump. You watch the dump every week. He was over at Prosper, so he went over and has made his way. I think he was at College Station and ended up at Eastview. But I think Midlothian should take care of business. I really struggled with giving Midlothian this region because that game was close last year, and the way I've seen Lone Star play, it's been bad. But the talent is there, Ward. It's just something is not clicking over there. I don't want to say it's because of a sophomore quarterback, but there is because he's great. Trey Wright is phenomenal. He's got the tools and he's got the big play ability, but just seems like last year the offense was running a little bit crisper, even though that it's technically better this year, but it was crisper last year with Reese Hoyt. Just let him do what he's going to do. Right now, I feel like there's too many chefs in the kitchen. It kind of reminds me of Denton Ryan a couple of years ago. Like, how are you getting all these players? I don't know if it's discontent. It's just not looking good.
I wonder if it has anything to do with all those cameras over there all the time shooting the documentary, like they're going into their houses.
Mike Alexander's fault, I tell you.
Mike Alexander just shut down the whole Lone Star. Unbelievable, Mike. Come on. All right, let's move on to the Highland Park Regional. There's absolutely no reason not to call it the Highland Park Regional. They certainly earned it. Buck Randall had another sweet game. I think he's got to be up over 4,000 now. Reedy's playing at Creekview on Thursday down there at Standridge. And then we got Cedar Park and Tyler down the back end, and Frisco Wakeland against Newman Smith. With the loss to Creekview, they get Wakeland. but it's maybe a better choice, right? Better choice than Reedy, even though they're both probably going to lose.
Yeah, I think they're going to be Reedy. Reedy's going to be a big favorite. Reedy was one of my dark horses because I would have maybe even considered them for an upset on Highland Park, but their quarterback broke their collarbone against Lone Star,
Yeah,
and I know talking to some of the parents and my Reedy insiders, they thought they could beat Lone Star, and once they actually played, they felt like if they had their quarterback, they were going to beat Lone Star. And if you look at the score and the stats and whatnot, it certainly bears it out. I mean, their defense was shutting Lone Star down pretty much completely. It's like they didn't know what to do with that pass rush, and that's the strength of Reedy. And Creekview's not going to know what to do with that pass rush. Reedy's going to be big, but that's like an interesting styles matchup if you look ahead to the second round, just because Highland Park, they're susceptible to having a lot of points put up, but Buck Randall's able to put up a lot of points.
yeah.
But can Reedy match them without their quarterback? And I think that's just kind of that. I wish we could have kept him because he's such a great athlete. Cedar Park, Tyler, first one to 70 wins that game. I think Wakeland has a pretty good chance to go to the third round. But I think, just like we've talked about all year, I did it, Ward, by the way. I flipped Wakeland and Reedy in my rankings to end the season just because Reedy down the line every single week played Wakeland better, played the teams that Wakeland played better. I thought they should have beat Wakeland. You thought they should have beat Wakeland. And I think if Highland Park beats Frisco Reedy in the second round, they'll beat Wakeland a lot more in the third round. I think that'll be a lesser competitive. But it just wasn't what a couple of years ago when Wakeland upset Highland Park in a game that we kind of just dismissed them. Yep. So, I'm sure they love clipping us, just completely dismissing them after they already got a win on the board against them a couple of years ago.
Man, it seems like it's the same route they took, right? I don't remember who Highland Park played in the first round, but I think they played Reedy in the second, or Wakeland in the second, and Reedy in the third last year. So they might be going through the same Frisco teams they did before. All right, 5A Division 2, Region 1, Melissa region. Melissa's got Colleyville Heritage. It's one of those games I called you on and said, what do you think about this one? And you look past Colleyville Heritage like that. Bodie Weaver, what? He's nothing. And then Timberview and Anna, we both, I don't know if you said nothing, but you said they are worse than last year and they're going to go probably get stomped out by Melissa. So I was like, all right, no Kitty Deal Stadium for me. And then we have Anna and Timberview, which is going to be, I think it's going to be a classic. I know you think it's going to be a classic. Defense versus offense, it's going to be pretty sweet. And they get the old school Mansfield Stadium over there at R.L. Anderson.
Yeah, this is going to be one of those week on, week off. You can look at these four teams: Melissa, Colleyville Heritage, Timberview, and Anna. Any of these four teams could win the region if they get out of the first round. That's the key thing. You got to get out of this first round. Colleyville Heritage isn't as good as they were last year. And, we saw what happened. Anna stomped them out. It took the fourth quarter, but, they put up 28 in the fourth quarter. They won that game going away. And now they're at home when that happened. They're going to go out to Melissa. That's a hard place to play. It's a beautiful stadium. I think Melissa's going to take care of business with and just feel at home there. Timberview Anna is, for me, the game of the week, the best game. I don't know if I'm actually going to go to that game just because it's a 7:30 start on a Friday, and I got something to do at 11:30. Ward, I don't know if you know that. I don't know if you'll be there, but it may be hard for me to get back here in time for that 11:30 start, especially with the offense that these two teams are going to put up. But Timberview, one thing I've noticed in looking at their box scores, and this is just where if I watch them every week, I might understand it. It kind of reminds me of Mansfield Summit because Mansfield Summit had Damaris Bird, who was kind of their senior quarterback. He expected to be in there, but then Ian Gebhardt came in there and they started playing better. Well, we thought Miles Davis was going to be that guy, but now all of a sudden I'm looking at the box scores for McKinney or for Mansfield Timberview, and this guy named Stephen Hall is all over it, but Miles Davis is still in there. It's like they've benched him for another quarterback because I don't know. Like, that's just one thing I don't know. I just found it interesting in looking at the box scores. And you know what, Ward? If you got two quarterbacks, you don't got any.
No quarterbacks, man.
Anna's got one quarterback. His name is Ziondre Williams. That's all you need to know. Timberview has had several games this year when they play high-powered offenses that got into a shootout. Colleyville Heritage was up 3 scores on them till they came back in the fourth quarter and won that game by 1 point. As long as Anna doesn't pull a Walnut Grove and have a fourth quarter collapse, I think Anna should win this game.
Are we positive that game's at 7:30? Because I know Step and them put up 7 o'clock on their Dave
Maybe
Campbell's
they changed
website.
it. I heard from people in Anna said 7:30.
Okay, well, people from there probably know. They were probably just rushing out a bunch of 7 p.m. starts and We'll just give them 7 p.m. and we don't really know. Who knows? All right, that's going to be a great one. We'll
I'll
definitely
double
have
check that
fun
because
with that.
7 o'clock might change my calculus on going to that one because it's clearly the game of the week.
Absolutely. All right, let's move to the Argyle region. How have you felt about Argyle recently? I mean, we haven't had them on our
Not
air. We don't
good.
really talk about them that much. And two of the best coaches in the history of North Texas are going up against each other. And then down in the other half, we got Walnut Grove and Seguin. Seguin with that dramatic, gutsy 4th and 8 go for it deal to kind of seal off that thing against Summit to get into postseason. They get rewarded with the trip up to Children's Health Stadium.
I feel like they did that either earlier this year as well or last year. It's like they did something completely crazy and it paid off for them. And congratulations to Arlington Seguin. Cam Newton only touched the ball 10 times this past week, so they listened to us. They reduced his workload. Okay, we're not going to give him 50 carries against Frisco Liberty or whichever school that they were playing. Just 10 for 150. And we'll give him a pass out of the backfield. Walnut Grove, I think, is going to be a big favorite over Seguin. But last year, Seguin did give him a little bit of a tussle. So I definitely don't want to just completely overlook Seguin, but I think Walnut Grove is better than they were last year. The El Paso schools don't really matter in this. They're all going to lose just like next week to whoever comes out of these District 3 and District 4 games. But like you said, you talk about a coaching clinic with Todd Rogers and Todd Dodge. I mean,
Yeah,
you just want to kind of go to just to go watch the coaching game because,
right.
like you said, that is just excellence in coaching.
Absolutely. You picking Argyle by how much?
I think Lovejoy is going to give them a one-score game. I think it's going to be fascinating. The computer polls have Argyle by 3 or 4 scores. I think Argyle is going to hang on, but Lovejoy is not going to go down. And it feels like every year Argyle and Lovejoy play each other. I remember you like had to like take a week off after covering an Argyle Lovejoy game a couple of years ago. It
Yeah,
was what 49-49
yeah.
at halftime or
Too
something.
much. It was too much for me. It
Yeah,
was
just
all the way up there at Lovejoy. I was like, "What's happening? I got to make decisions on what highlights to show." But yeah, it's exactly right.
So these two teams know each other. They've played each other in non-district, so there is a familiarity there. It's a really bad draw for Argyle. I think they would have rather seen anybody else
Anybody
in
else? Yeah.
Lovejoy. Get Emerson in here, get somebody else in here, because Lovejoy is a tough matchup for them in the first round. But I think Argyle will take care of business. That's why I call it the Argyle Regional.
Well, I wonder why you called it the Sock Regional. I mean, I haven't had them on my airwaves in 8 weeks. I don't even know what's going on at Sock. You guys doing okay? I don't know. It
Well,
seems like you're doing okay. Well, actually, the last time I heard about Sock was from and I think I brought this up last time. A North Shore coach who told me that he thought Sock was the best team and could beat anybody in Houston 6A all the way down. Sounded a little bit crazy, but and Richmond might have struck up Richmond Randall's perked their ears up a little bit. But Sock definitely deserves to have this regional named after him. And then there's Terrell, who is they're. I mean, it's not gonna. I'm not even saying they're cruising to a matchup with South Lake Carroll because they're going to end up playing a Marshall team because I think Marshall is going to beat Huntsville. That is pretty quality, and that might be a tough matchup there.
Does Huntsville have the sophomore quarterback? Wasn't he a freshman last year? We got to see him a little bit against Sock.
Yeah, they've kind of struggled a little bit this year, though. It hadn't been a Huntsville type year they've had over the last 2 3 years. So they had to really fight to get in the playoffs the last 2 weeks.
Well, Marshall hasn't looked great at times. I mean, they lost to Texas High. Texas High lost to Midlothian Heritage. We know Midlothian Heritage lost to Terrell. So I think Terrell does have a pretty easy road to the
Okay.
third round. I am fascinated by a South Oak Cliff Terrell game just because of the styles
Styles.
that both of them play. And again, if Terrell can do what they want to do, they can get that game into like the literal 3-4 possession kind of a game and a half. I mean, but South Oak Cliff could also have a good enough defense to shut that down, kind of like the second half of the Midlothian Heritage 3-and-out punt, and just absolutely do nothing. But Terrell has been fun to watch, and I know I'm a little bit more optimistic. I always joke that if you're going to catch South Oak Cliff, you want to catch them in the first round. They didn't give up any points in district. That was kind of the big story that you missed on them. That they gave up 0 points in district, which is absolutely legendary. Crandall scored a lot of points, but they also gave up a lot of points. I think Crandall will push South Oak Cliff a little bit defensively. I don't think we're going to see another donut on the board, but South Oak Cliff should take care of business. I couldn't tell you anything about Montgomery Montgomery and Mount Pleasant. But this one just kind of fast forward me to week 3, South Oak Cliff and Terrell. That's the game to keep an eye on.
I don't know. Terrell can't afford to fall behind by 2 scores because that's not a come from behind type squad. So let's hope if that game happens that they keep it close throughout. All right, let's move on to the PNG bracket. The
Am I being
PNG bracket.
sacrilegious? Am I being sacrilegious?
No, they've earned that. I know Midlothian Heritage was like, can't you give a DFW team some love here? But they've earned that. And Midlothian Heritage Texas High game is going because Texas High is going to beat Lake Creek. Lake Creek has to go there. It's like a 6-hour drive or something like that and get beaten. I don't think Heritage gets past Texas High, so that's not.
They already beat them this year. What has changed?
That's right. That is true. They did beat them in the non-district. But don't you think playoff Texas High is ready a little bit more, a neutral site and all that stuff?
I mean, I wasn't high on Midlothian Heritage in that game. I picked them to lose by 4 touchdowns. They didn't. So they could get their lick back for sure. But, I mean, Midlothian Heritage is not going to look at Texas High with fear. It's like we've already beat you this year. But, again, Midlothian Heritage did not play well against Terrell. So they got to play a perfect game, but they know they can do it. The bottom half of the district, Woodrow Wilson
got a free pass.
Yeah, PNG's got it all the way to the regional finals. But a Texas High PNG final will not get talked about on this show, but get talked about on your Houston podcast. But it's still an interesting game, just because again, Texas High, it feels like they've just got that personality to where they're going to get one eventually. Right. It's like they've been so close. They've got the talent, but they always lose to those lesser teams. Something always happens, but they're good enough. Will this be the year? I don't know. PNG's got a really high computer rating, at least.
You sound like that guy that used to be on Saturday Night Live who looks in the mirror and says, "You know what? I'm good enough. I'm handsome enough, and dadgummit, I'm gonna get the win." All right, let's go to 4A Division 1. This is called the West Plains region. We all saw what West Plains did last year. They actually lost to Liberty Christian this year when they came into town, but that's apples and oranges. Who cares about that? I can't even pronounce the El Paso team. You let me tell me what that is all about.
Isleta.
Okay. We have a lot of teams in here and not a single North Texas squad in here, but we're bringing it up because you feel West Plains, if they even get a chance to play Salina, which you're going to tell us later that you don't think they're going to get a chance to play them, they don't win this time.
I mean, if you're a fan of 4A, you know who West Plains is because of that game against Salina last year. But if you look at this bracket, they're easy. It's an easy pathway to the third round. Brownwood is the only team that's kind of DFW adjacent, but West Plains regional. There you go.
So that's your analysis. Let's move on to the Stephenville regional because we're going to take some time to talk about Stephenville because we haven't really talked about them a lot this year. Tell me why they're good enough that you've already said. Maybe you said it 3 weeks ago that you thought. I mean, you may even said it earlier than that. You think they're going to beat Salina. Shut them down. You said it on the show, or at least you were going to. I don't know if he asked you the question for it. But Stephenville is playing some good football like the old days, which is tough for me because when I go to shoot those games, I really start getting headaches when I start hearing that rattling can. I can't deal with it. Everybody has to have one. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm already getting a headache, and it's gone. Go ahead.
They remind me of the Allen of 4A. I mean, it's just like every position they're really good at. They got a really good quarterback in Copeland. They got really good running backs in McClendon and in Van Zant, and they got a great passing game in DeVivo. I mean, it is just every position that Stephenville has is good. And then you look at what they did in non-district, beating a Ruston team that beat a Longview team. I mean, this is a team that looks complete, and they weren't challenged at any point in district this year. I just think Stephenville is that team. And when you look at this bracket, again, it's just an easy pass all the way to the fourth round. I mean, there's nobody in this district in this 8-pack that's going to challenge them.
But they are going to end up getting West Plains before they get Salina. So your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, they got to get there, but I think Stephenville West Plains is the game to keep an eye on. It's like we do this with some things. It's like we're just waiting for Aledo, Denton, Ryan. We're just waiting for Stephenville West Plains. We'll get back there in a couple of weeks.
All right, we'll get back to it a little later on. Region 2, the Alvarado region, which means he thinks Alvarado's going to beat those upstart Eagles from Carter Riverside. That's a crazy prediction, or maybe not so crazy.
Give them the props, Ward.
I
I
will
know you've
give
been
you your
talking
props.
about
I'm
him.
very excited about the fact Carter Riverside went into that stadium, didn't have a big crowd. They started, but they did what they had to do because Western Hills got on them early, and they held off one by a couple points back in the postseason after 3 decades, and they get rewarded with Alvarado, but they at least have this week to be, popping their chest at school when they're walking through the hallways because they did something, and that's needs to be commended.
Yeah.
Springtown's a big winner over Lakewood, and you know that. But what do you think about Carter and Panther Creek before, unless you want to go back to Carter Riverside?
I mean, first time in 30 years. Congratulations, Coach Laura. That is phenomenal. We're happy for you. I remember when Fort Worth Poly made the playoffs for the first time. I went out to Burleson and watched them. They played Stephenville. It was ugly. Unfortunately, Alvarado is going to have the JV playing in the second half and probably still putting up numbers. It's a great story to get there. So congratulations to Carter Riverside. This is a pretty easy to say. I think the first round, but the second round, every game is going to be a
Oh
banger.
yeah,
The third round, and that game is going to be a banger because these winners, Springtown, Panther Creek, Alvarado, Sulphur Springs, any four of them could have received the name of the regional. Sulphur Springs, I just if I knew the status of their quarterback, I heard he might be back for the first round, but he wasn't playing against Panther Creek, and they still beat Panther Creek.
right.
And we kind of sounded the alarm with Panther Creek that something hasn't looked right for the last couple of weeks, and they lose to Sulphur Springs at home. So Panther Creek just doesn't feel like that's a confident pick. Springtown has looked great offensively, so I think Springtown is going to beat Panther Creek unless Panther Creek gets it figured out. We were talking about Panther Creek being the team to push Salina. They may not even get past the second round. Sulphur Springs Alvarado is an amazing second round game. Put that in the star. I mean, that's a perfect DFW area game. You can call it the Country Roads game next week
Absolutely.
if that happens, and get a nice 2-pack with something. So there are some. This is the most fascinating regional, but Alvarado has earned it because last year they almost beat Salina too. Don't forget that.
Right.
And they lost their all world quarterback and haven't missed a step.
No.
No pun intended to our Houston area
Haven't
insider.
messed it beat, huh? Yeah, I don't see any big injuries there at Panther Creek. They're just not getting the job done. I mean,
Right.
Donovan Webb is. He's doing everything he can possibly do on both sides of the field, but I don't feel like the offense is clicking. And then with Sulphur Springs, we were at the Salina game when the quarterback hurt. They didn't really know what they had. I know they knew what they had as a backup, but they didn't know how he'd kind of fit in. I think they know his role now. They're putting him in situations where he can succeed. So maybe if they don't play him against Kimball, they still win that one, but hopefully have him in the second round there, their guy.
Unfortunately, Bam is going to experience the Bam of Sulphur Springs this week.
Bam. Here's the Salina Regional. They're taking on Pinkston on Thursday. Eastern Hills against Kennedale. Kennedale get the win. Salina goes they go 3 rounds for sure, if not 4.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on Decatur Castleberry, which will be at Birdville, by the way, if anybody wants to just wander over there. And then how about those Lincoln? You want to talk about how Lincoln got their spot, got their seating?
That was an incredible story because they had to win by 8 to get to overcome the point differential, and they were in overtime. And the first overtime they got nothing, so now we got to go for 2. And they got the ball first in the second overtime. They got their touchdown, but they missed the 2-point conversion at that point, so they're only up by 6. If Carter takes the knee, they win district.
Right.
It's like we're done. We're going to lose this game, but we win district. But they go for it, and they got into a crazy 4th down situation. They threw it up for grabs. Lincoln pick 6 in
That's
second
wild.
overtime and on 4th down to win the game by 12. I don't think I've ever seen in high
You
school
say that.
football.
I knew you were going to say that. I was going to say we say that a couple times a year. I feel like the statement. I've never seen this in high school football again. That's what's so great about Texas high school football. That's wild. There was literally no chance for them to get up by 8
Right.
until they got up by 12.
So they
It's
got by
crazy.
12 because you go to the third overtime, you're doing 2-point conversions
Exactly.
at
That's
that
the
point.
only chance.
It
Only
doesn't
chance,
matter.
and they
The
did it.
only chance. And I saw something this week to get to that end that I even talked to the officials at the game if they'd ever seen it, and they had Wiley East had to kick off from their own 7-yard line. I mean, in that game because they got a personal foul on their touchdown, they got a personal foul on their extra point, and then when they kicked it off, they got a offside. So they had to get 3 different penalties to go back to their own 7-yard line to kick off. I was like I talked to the officials afterwards who watched the podcast, by the way. They like to know what's going on, and they are like, I've never seen it. One of the back judge was like, I didn't know what to feel like because I was sitting in the end zone watching them kick off. It's just something they've never seen before. But the whole thing the whole thing about getting 12 points in overtime, especially on 4th down, never seen it. Got Lincoln, and like you said, you look at this region, kind of reminds me of the Forney and Longview DeSoto region we talked about. This is like not fair. I mean, you already the only team that can be competitive really with Salina is Paris, and they already beat them by 4 scores. Right. So this is just Salina 3 weeks. They're not going to be challenged. With all due respect to Decatur, who already lost to Springtown by 3 touchdowns, that other half of the bracket is way better than this.
Oh, absolutely. All right, for 4A Division II, the Greenwood Regional, as we're calling it here. I want to hear your thoughts on Benbrook and Eagle Mountain. Is Eagle Mountain just going to stomp them out, or is this going to be a good one? Okay, never mind then.
I mean, there's not much to say here. Midland Greenwood is a big favorite. I mean, computer-wise, I think they're 3 touchdowns better than everybody in this region. So in this region, so it's just going to be like, okay, let's get to see Midland Greenwood versus Brock.
Brock. I always like when you say Brock like that.
Brock. But I think Glenrose in round 3 is actually going to be a competitive game. That's the only competitive game I think we're going to have in this region. Everything else is just going to be blowouts galore for Brock specifically. But Brock Glenrose in round 3, that's going to be a fun.
Not bad. That sounds country roadish to me. All right, Sunnyvale Regional. Sunnyvale quarterback hooked me up with some points there to get me an A win in fantasy. We'll talk about that later. You think Sunnyvale Van, not Van Alstine, but Van, you think that's going to be a competitive game in week 2?
Sunnyvale's got to go through all the Vans to get to where they want to go. And as we're going to see on the next slide, again, this is a disproportional bracket because Sunnyvale's got a much easier road. Athens-Gilmer as a first-round game is an incredible game if you're out in East Texas and would enjoy that. Crum is a great story. They were undefeated, but again, they score a lot of points, but they give up a lot of points. I don't think they're going to be a factor in week 2. Really, Sunnyvale Van is the game to kind of keep an eye on, but they already won that game this year. Yeah. It was Pleasant Grove that knocked them off. So I think Sunnyvale is good enough to get out of this region and not really get tested because they got the more favorable region.
True. This is the one that's not so favorable, Carthage region.
Yeah, I mean, you got Pleasant Grove and Carthage. Remember, Pleasant Grove already beat Sunnyvale by a couple of scores earlier. You got Carthage, the number 1 team in the state. We're all looking forward to Carthage Pleasant Grove in the regional semifinals because that is one of those banger games. You don't even need to be a state. You don't even need to be a DFW area fan. I mean, that's just one game. That's like cinema. You just appreciate it. Pleasant Grove Carthage will be a fun one, and whoever wins that will probably be a favorite over Sunnyvale.
Okay. Kudos to Sanger. They had a heck of a season as well. They're still going. What do you think in this one? We got Peaster. You actually said on the broadcast you got Peaster possibly in the state final.
Peaster beat Vernon significantly, and the Peaster Paradise game earlier this year was one of those crazy finishes, which I've seen several times in the District 4-3A report with Whitesboro and Brock had a couple of crazy finishes as well. That Peaster should have won that game against Paradise, but Paradise with a pick 6 late in the game was able to flip that score, and then Paradise struggled with Vernon. Peaster beat Vernon by 5 scores. Peaster looks like they have figured it out, and I actually flip them in my rankings this week, and it's going to be something I'm sure you're going to hear about on Instagram because people are going to say, well, Paradise beat Peaster. Yeah, but also Peaster beat the heck out of Vernon, who you barely struggled with. And should Paradise have beaten Peaster? I don't know. It's kind of like the Wakeland Reedy thing that week 11, I have the executive decision making to flip it. So I'm flipping it. I think Peaster is going to get out of this region. I think they're going to get all the way to the state semifinals. At the very least, they could go all the way, Ward. Ward. It's a really fun team to watch. And again, they kind of remind me of Stephenville, that they don't got that one key player like
Right.
some of the other ones do, like Aiden Brown at Commerce. You can just kind
Yeah.
of keep an eye on and be like, that's the guy. But everybody on Peaster is good. They've been working on depth, and they got it this year.
All right, let's go to 3A Division One, Region One, Jim Ned region. We have a shooter out there named Jim Fry. We always call him Jim Fry, the Jim Ned guy. So maybe Jim Fry, the Jim Ned guy, will be shooting Jim Ned against Boyd. But your thoughts on this one? Can our guys from Paradise get through it?
The way they've been playing bad. I mean, they've not. Something is wrong with Paradise. They looked like a no brainer to be the team this year. Injuries, it's got to be injuries, because in 3A that's usually the thing that we see when we see crazy results. But Jim Ned had injuries earlier in the year, which kind of kept some of the. People say, I didn't watch the games, but people said that's why some of those games against Trinity Leadership Academy were much closer than other games. But this should be Jim Ned all the way through, even over Paradise, unless Paradise gets healthy all of a sudden. But I haven't seen it in any of the box scores yet.
Trouble in Paradise. Somebody called Jim Fry the Jim Ned guy. He's got to get out there. All right, let's go.
We got two tickets in Paradise just waiting for him.
That's true. And then when they lose, I get to say my favorite line: Paradise lost. That's for your literary fans out there. All right, 3A Division One, Region Two, the Malakoff Regional. Why are you doing this to me, Dixie? Why?
Because Malakoff beat Winsboro by 3 scores last week. But it's going to be the Eastern area teams that are going to take care of business on this side of the bracket. But Malakoff, having beaten Winsboro, should be a favorite to get to the regional finals.
If somebody likes small schools, I think Pottsboro and Maypro are playing in town here somewhere. So get to that one on Thursday. All right, 3A Region 2. Those boys from Commerce, gets the regional named after them. They're playing some good ball.
They lost last week, Ward. They lost to Mount Vernon last week. It was crazy, but they still. I can't give it to Mount Vernon though. I just consider it a fluke upset. But I think that opens it up because you have Grandview. Grandview played Malakoff reasonably well earlier this year. They lost, so Grandview can look at this. Grandview Palmer on a first round game. I mean, these are two teams that have underachieved a little bit, but that is a banger first round game in Grandview Palmer. But again, if Commerce can just calm down, figure it out. They should get their lick back against Mount Vernon in the third round, and they've already beat Malakoff, so I think Commerce has a really good chance. But these are teams that have not been there, and what happens every year, Ward, when we see teams that look good in the regular season, then they get knocked off by a name brand that has been there because they get used to it. It's what the culture dictates. So Commerce is playing with house money at this point, but I think they're talented enough to take care of business.
They get stymied usually by the more experienced team. 3A Division 2 Region 1, the Canadian District. Your thoughts on Canadian, why they should go through this and knock off teams such as Dimmitt, who I've never heard of, and Grape Creek, who I've also never heard of.
I don't have any opinion on this. I'm just calling it the Canadian region. It's the next slide I think is important for DFW area fans because Wall is the team. Wall is the team you got to worry about. We're not going to have Canadian Gunner 8 or 15 or whatever it is, WrestleMania 27. It's going to be Wall Gunner 2. And unfortunately for Gunner, I think Wall is going to win it. And when you look at this, it's easy for Canadian. It's easy for Wall. If you're a West Texas fan, you're just waiting for after Thanksgiving because there's not a competitive game in these brackets.
Right. But you still got them playing Gunner, which we'll get to sooner. But this is the Jacksonboro bracket. They're playing Toller. You've already kind of half given up on Toller like in week 5. But Holiday's in this one. They've been kind of up and down. So your thoughts?
I want the Instagram people who were coming at me when I ranked Jacksboro at 1-4. And I was like, just wait for them. Just wait for them. They're here. They beat Holiday. They won the district. Holiday got 3 losses. Holiday hadn't lost in 7 years in district, and they lost 3 straight. They are on a absolute tailspin right now, but they're playing early who won their region, but they won in a 3-way tie. They're 5-5, but they're the 1 seed. So I think Holiday has a really good chance to get out of there. I think Leonard will take care of business. Jacksboro will have their way with Toller. Blue Ridge should take care of business. I don't see anybody testing Jacksboro, but what could be interesting is if you get a Jacksboro Holiday rematch in the third round. Could Holiday finally get it figured out, because they're that name. We talk about how names usually get their lick back in the playoffs. Holiday is the name.
It's the name there for sure. Here's Gunner's regional. Your thoughts on Gunner's first possible 3 games here? Let's see Cedar Hill in there too, by the way.
Yeah, that's what I'm excited about, because I don't think Cedar Hill is going to beat Gunner, but I think they're going to get to the third round, which for them would be an incredible run and worthy of praise by itself. But I don't think they can be competitive with Gunner. But stranger things have happened. They played Jim Ned within 1 point, and Gunner is not what they were. So I don't think they're going to blow out Trinity leadership by any stretch of the imagination, but Gunner should be a 2 or 3 score favorite. But again, Wall is just that team this year.
Right. All right, let's run through some 2A real quickly. Give me some analysis here, buddy boy.
We had a 3-way tie in the DFW district with Tioga, Tom Bean, and in Wolf City ended up tying, but who won that district? It was Alvord. So Alvord is kind of the team to keep an eye on the bottom half of the bracket, but Hamilton is looking really good on the top half of the bracket. Tioga drawing them, being part of that 3-way tie and getting the 4 seed. That's tough for Tioga in the first round. So I think this is the Hamilton Regional.
As well it should be. All right, this is the Frankston Regional. We saw Frankston beat some of our squads pretty handily.
Yeah, didn't we have Frankston Kearns on the country roads?
Yeah, that was ready to go. That wasn't it didn't work out for Kearns.
Didn't work out for Kearns. I don't think it's going to work out for anybody else in this region. It is the Frankston Regional, and I think Frankston will beat whoever I had in that last region. That's how much I keep up with these things. Hamilton. I think Frankston beats Hamilton in the regional finals to get out of Region 2.
What's their mascot over there, Frankston? You know it, or did I put you on the spot? Oops. Sorry, brother. I'm sorry. Honeygrove. You love yourself some Honeygrove. Tell me how they're going to get through this one.
I'm just putting this up because I think they're going to make it to at least the state semifinals. And if you know a little bit about East Texas football, because a lot of East Texas schools out there, Honeygrove should have a pretty comfortable pathway to the third round and beyond.
All right. What about the San Augustine Regional?
I just put this up there because nobody here is going to beat Honeygrove in the fourth round of the playoffs. So again, Honeygrove, my adopted dump team, we traded them for Toller. I think the dump is going to be very happy for the next couple of weeks. I got them winning Region 3. But unfortunately, in Region 4, there were these teams called Shiner and Ganado and state championship teams that I think that could be where their road ends.
Ganado's going to be tough for sure. Collinsville Regional. Collinsville, do they have what it takes to go?
Yes, I called this to Collinsville Regional. They already beat Lindsay. The other half of the bracket, I think, is where the actual strength is. But I think Collinsville should get to have their rematch with Munster. But if you look at the Munster Regional, you got to get through Albany. And that's the hard part because Albany is one of those teams, again, well coached, great culture over there. I think Albany Munster in the third round is a game to watch.
All right, Diggsy, we got through the brackets there. Let's finish it up by showing everybody what happened.
We don't need it. We could just say, hey, you know what? We talked about everybody this week and just call it a day. No?
No. Let's talk about my lone victory. I get to the end of the victory, 4-7, which is a heck of a lot better than I did in this Gossick little pick deal where I went 2-8. Which it's like 4 days after you said, I'm not worried about anybody ahead of me except one guy, and I wasn't that one guy. And now we know why I wasn't worried about me. 2-8, I can't pick.
I went 3-7, so I mean, like I only missed 27 picks on my whole sheet. I had 194 games. 7 of them were on his.
Yeah, brother. There's a close matchup. I got a 10-point win there thanks to Sunnyvale's quarterback, Casey Malvin. But good stuff. We'll do that again next year. It's fun for Diggs to beat me up, then do bits, and then just laugh.
And you'll go 4-7 again next year. So we're excited.
Probably will. That's
your
do.
bit. You're Mr. 4. You're not 6-7. No. You're Mr. 4.
Yeah, let's go 2 more weeks so I get 2 more wins and get myself some ratings here. 6-7. All right, brother, go to a playoff game. Tell me what you're going to on Friday, and we'll talk later. Well, you'll tell me at some point this week. I know you will.
Probably Lewisville on Thursday, but Friday is to be determined.
All right. Well, we'll see you next week.